At some point today, or this week, or this month, something is going to make you cry. Maybe it already has. A song that hit wrong. A memory that surfaced without warning. A movie you've seen 3 times and still can't get through. Or maybe just a moment of pressure so sustained, so quiet, that the only thing left to do was let your eyes fill up and spill over. And here is what nobody ever tells you about that moment. You are the only animal on Earth that does it. Not metaphorically, not approximately, literally. Of the millions of species that have ever existed, exactly one produces emotional tears. You. Your children. Every human being who has ever lived on every continent, across every culture in recorded history. Elephants mourn. Wolves howl. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, show behaviors that look startlingly like grief, but not one of them weeps. So why do you? The question sounds simple. The answer goes somewhere most people never expect, and it starts not with emotion, but with salt. Your body is always making tears. Right now as you read this, your lacrimal glands are quietly producing a thin film of fluid that keeps your corneas lubricated and protected. This is reflex tearing, entirely automatic, driven by the same basic maintenance system that keeps your joints from locking up and your mouth from going dry. Every mammal with forward-facing eyes does something similar. Tear ducts are old, ancient even, a functional piece of evolutionary plumbing that predates humans by hundreds of millions of years. But emotional tears are something else entirely. When researchers like William Frey, a biochemist who spent years studying human crying at the St. Paul Ramsey Medical Center, began chemically analyzing the tears produced during emotional distress versus those produced by, say, chopping an onion, they found something remarkable. Emotional tears contain a fundamentally different chemical signature: higher concentrations of certain proteins, elevated levels of a hormone called prolactin, which is also involved in milk production, and notably is present in much higher baseline levels in women than in men. Elevated levels of adrenocorticotropic hormone, a key stress marker, and, critically, significantly higher concentrations of leucine and kephalin, a natural painkiller from the endorphin family. Your emotional tears are not just water. They are a pharmaceutical delivery system your body produces in response to psychological overload. Now ask yourself a harder question. Not just what tears are, but why they exist at all in this form. Because evolution does not preserve things for nothing. Every system that persists across thousands of generations is there because it did something useful. So what did crying ever do that was useful enough to survive? Here is where the story gets interesting and where your ancestors enter it. For most of human evolutionary history, between roughly 200,000 and 40,000 years ago, humans lived in tight, interdependent bands of related individuals. Your survival, not just your comfort, but your literal, physical survival, depended entirely on the cooperation of the people around you. You could not hunt the megafauna of the Pleistocene alone. You could not protect your children alone through the night. You could not find water, preserve food, tend wounds, or outlast a bad season alone. The group was not a social preference. The group was the only thing standing between you and death. Inside that world, the ability to accurately read the internal state of the people around you was not a soft skill. It was one of the most critical survival tools a human being could have. Knowing that a group member was in distress before they collapsed. Knowing that the person beside you at the fire was at the edge of their endurance. Knowing that the individual who just returned from the hunt was not simply tired, but broken in some way that would matter to the group if left unaddressed. These were life or death readings, and getting them wrong had consequences that rippled outward to everyone. This is where tears become legible as a signal. The evolutionary psychologist Oren Hassan at Tel Aviv University proposed one of the most compelling frameworks for understanding emotional tears, and his argument cuts straight to the core of what crying actually does. Hassan proposed that tears function as an honest signal, specifically a signal that is difficult to fake, and therefore trustworthy in a way that words cannot always be. You can say you are fine when you are not. You can arrange your face into something resembling calm, but the involuntary production of visible tears streaming down a face that has gone red, with a voice that breaks in a characteristic frequency across every human language ever studied, is almost impossible to perform convincingly if you do not mean it. Tears are a vulnerability display, and in the ancestral environment your body was built for, a genuine vulnerability display triggered something powerful and automatic in the people who witnessed it: the impulse to close the distance and help. Think about what happens to you when you watch someone cry. Not cry theatrically, not perform distress for effect, but genuinely, helplessly cry. Something moves in your chest. Your instinct, in most cases, is to move toward them, to touch them, to fix whatever has broken if you possibly can. This is not a cultural norm you learned. It is a response so consistent across cultures, across ages, across the spectrum of human temperament, that researchers studying it have concluded it has the hallmarks of an evolved response rather than a taught one. Infants respond to the sound of other infants crying. People who have never been taught to comfort others still reach out in the presence of tears. You are wired to respond to this signal because for most of human history, the people around you whose signals you ignored were the people your group lost. And here is where the chemical reality of tears loops back into the picture, because the signal does something else too. Recall that emotional tears are chemically loaded, including those elevated levels of stress hormones and natural painkillers. Frey's hypothesis, later supported by studies showing that a majority of people report feeling calmer after crying, is that emotional tears are literally draining excess stress chemistry from the body. You are not just signaling distress, you are actively venting it. The biological consequence of a good cry is not just the social response it summons from others. It is a measurable internal shift in your own neurochemical state. Your ancestors who could cry, and who had people around them who responded to crying, were likely better at recovering from acute emotional trauma quickly enough to function again. And functioning again, in an environment where the group could not afford to carry someone indefinitely, was not optional. So why don't other animals do this? Why just us? The most useful answer is probably that emotional tears, as a specific communication channel, require something that most other animals never develop to the same degree: a social group that is both close enough and cognitively complex enough to read and respond to them usefully. Wolves live in tight family groups, but their primary emotional communication happens through vocalizations, posture, and scent, channels that evolved to work across distance and in the dark. Elephants display grief behaviors that look strikingly meaningful to us, but the communication channels their social structures rely on, low-frequency rumbles, physical contact, mirroring behavior, are different tools for a different kind of group. Humans developed something unusual: face-to-face social interaction at extremely close range, inside groups where every member's emotional state was directly relevant to the functioning of the whole, while simultaneously developing one of the most expressive faces of any primate. The whites of human eyes are visible and trackable in a way that no other apes are. Human facial muscles are more numerous and more fine-grained than those of any other species. The human face is, in evolutionary terms, a signal board tuned over hundreds of thousands of years to transmit information to other humans reading it from close range in good light. In that context, tears make extraordinary sense. They are the most visible possible signal on the most information-rich surface of the body, delivered involuntarily in exactly the situations where the group most needs to know that one of its members needs support. There is one more layer to this that almost never gets discussed, and it might be the most human thing of all. Humans are the only animal that cries at things that aren't happening to them directly. You know this already because you have done it. A film about characters who don't exist. A piece of music written by someone who died before your grandparents were born. A stranger's story overheard on a train. The homecoming video of a soldier whose name you'll never know. You cry at these things. Your nervous system cannot stop itself. And the reason is that your brain does something almost no other animal brain can do at scale. It simulates other minds. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio, in his decades of research into emotion and consciousness, described how the human brain constructs internal models of other people's emotional states with enough fidelity to trigger genuine physiological responses. When you watch a fictional character lose someone they love, your brain is not watching a screen. It is, in a real neurological sense, running that experience. Your amygdala activates. Your stress hormones shift. Your lacrimal glands respond. This capacity to be moved to tears by something happening to someone else, real or imagined, near or far, living or long dead, is arguably the most evolutionarily advanced thing your body does. It means your nervous system is capable of caring, genuinely, chemically, in a way that shows up in your bloodstream, about people who are not you. In the ancestral context, this is precisely what made the group cohere. The person who could be moved by another person's pain was the person who stayed, who shared food, who kept watch, who didn't leave the injured member behind. Every time you feel your eyes fill up at a song you've heard 100 times, at a story that isn't yours, at the beauty or grief or grace of something that has nothing directly to do with your survival, you are not being weak or sentimental or irrational. You are doing the thing your species evolved to do better than anything else alive. You are feeling, on behalf of someone else, in a body that never learned the difference between their pain and yours. That is not a flaw in the design. That is the design. It is the thing that held the small groups together when there was nothing else. It is the thing that still holds us together now, across distances and screens and centuries of separation, in a world your ancestors could never have imagined. And the next time something makes you cry, at some point today, or this week, or this month, remember what is actually happening in your body. something ancient, something useful, something that kept the people around you close and kept you close to them in the long, dark nights before any of this existed. Your tears are not weakness leaking out of you. They are the oldest proof you have that you were never meant to face any of this alone.